And welcome back to The Way of the Wandering Wizard. I am, as always, Robert Andrew Meredith Kennedy, although most folk know me as Bob the Wizard. And I am a pure and open channel for the finest vibrations of divine love and light, made manifest here, in service to Gaia and those who travel with her. In my last little video, I was waxing lyrical about my recovery and the descent into some more morphine-fueled moments. Well, looking back over my diary, clearly quite a lot of the diary was my diary of pain. But that was an ongoing process. I've explained why. I'd gone through a fear spike. I was worried about sleeping. I was worried about waking up in pain again. Part of me had realised that. Certainly the boys had realised it. But I was on my road to recovery. Over the course of those next few days, I had drains removed from various hips, from my hip, bits from my leg, my foot, dressings changed, and I was starting to head on the mend. Still very much in the morphine moment, shall we say. As the days progressed, it was deemed that I was now fit enough to have a proper bed bath. I mean, obviously I'd been wiped down, washed down for surgery, but my hair had still got bits of road dirt in it from where I'd been treated on the road. Still, I was honest, a faint smell of petrol, which, though it's not a trigger now, was a little bit of a moment at the time. Lying on a road soaked in petrol can focus the mind. And particularly when I was desperate for a smoke and I wasn't allowed one. My bike levers were still basically in the bathroom by the side of me, and they obviously smelt as well. I bagged them, took them home, photographed them, and they were disposed of. A jacket I'd worn for 20 odd years, but there were memories in that I did not want to carry forward. Start of a release and the start of a move into my healing. Well, over those days I had the staples removed from the rather large scar on my bottom, which to this day I still say this. It's down to a shark attack and the fact that I'm a quick swimmer. I lost the bet. I was sure it was going to be 33. Absolutely sure it was 33 staples. It was 32. But that was the big exposure off my hip. The bruising was coming out in magnificent colours, but slowly going down. I was concerned. I've been warned about compartment syndrome, so I spent a lot of my day moving my foot. Compartment syndrome is a horrendous situation where internal bleeding, basically through muscles and bits and pieces. So I was trying to do as much physio as I could do throughout the day. I'd really listen to my team. What can I do to aid my recovery in between my morphine-fueled bouts of madness? And I said, excuse me if this takes me a while to get out. There are days of remembering some intense experience. We're slowly on the mend. As I said, various stitches were coming out. Things were feeling more relieved. The bruising was coming down. I was starting to recover. I was about ready to get clean. I was deemed fit enough for a bed bath. And thankfully, the good lady volunteered for that role. It was probably the first point I mean this right. Up until that point of the accident in my life, I'd been very confident. I mean, not invincible, not immortal, but confident in my abilities. Physically assured. Helped, I suppose, my size. Never really truly felt vulnerable. I'd felt attacked, I'd felt annoyed, irritated, angry, and all the other emotions of humanity, but I'd never felt vulnerable, not for years. Being tilted upside down, I flapped. There's no two ways about it. Thankfully, Tan recognised the symptoms and basically explained to me that what I was having was a bit of a panic attack. I relaxed, let her wash my hair out, and just that sensation of being clean was just, again, another step in the recovery. Throughout my operations, I'd been catheterised, so I'd been weeing through a pipe. And I have a little moment or two, certainly during my moments of pain relief, I would try and time the arrival of the children so that I wasn't too out of it or too much in pain. But it was fun just to have some moments, just to reconnect with my family, have them sitting on my bed, rules or not. Until, of course, one of the little ones discovered the plastic pipe and bent it. Now, that's an unusual situation when you're used to letting urine flow through you, particularly at the time, that given all the operations, and probably because I was fighting off infections and all of the other foreign matter that was in my legs from the accident, I was running hot. I was drinking a lot. I wanted to flush through all of the chemicals that were being used for my own good. But the anaesthetics, all of these processes dry you out. I was aware that we're a wet body, so I was drinking a lot and passing a lot. Now, as I started to recover, you fall off the list a little. Now, through my operations, I would only need to ring the bell for the occasional bit of help. One of the nurses had given me one of those wonderful trapezes, so I could lift myself up, use my upper body to move about. I was able to do most things. I was still connected to the pipes and they were due to come out. The night before my catheter was due to come out, I became aware, I woke up somewhat uncomfortable, and looking down I became aware that the bag, which was normally quite small, was somewhat swollen. In fact, there was nowhere else for the urine to pass through. I was backed up. I started ringing the bell frantically. Nobody was coming. I had a bit of a hello, frantically ringing the bell, until eventually one of the nurses popped her head through the door and was like, "Bob, absolutely, it's a busy night. What's up?" I said, "I really need a bag change. Well, can I get round to it?" So I don't think it's going to last for long. We're going to get litres of wee everywhere. She looked round the corner, thankfully rushed back. And how she managed it, with a bucket included, to de-pipe me and re-pipe the bag without spilling too much on the floor. It was just an account of the skill of the nurses that were looking after me. Oh, she was a wonderful girl. She would come in at night with a bedpan on her head, dancing like some kind of music hall star. These were the things that lifted us up, or lifted me, certainly as a patient. He said they're not dark days, but they were hard days of going through things. So anyway, much on the mend, and having gone through the fact that I'd been washed and I was about to be decatheterised, I was going to mention a tale of a friend. And I'll mention it just in passing, because in case he watches it without many details, there are certain things that a gentleman does not want to happen when one has a catheter in place. One certainly doesn't need any encouragement, and one certainly doesn't need a very good and trusted friend to continually send pictures of ladies on the Reaper barn to their friend while they're lying in recovery. The kind of mates that I have. Anyway, the catheter was removed with the standard, you may feel a small prick. Not the first time I've heard that, as I hasten to add. Anyway, catheter 3. And, obviously, with my left leg having had a degree of miles of crutch, being able to move myself around on crutches, for crutch mobility certificate, I was issued with a set of crutches and allowed to get up out of bed. The first time in 14, 15 days I'd physically been able to get upright. I was as wobbly as a Bambi. There's very little strength left in my body, but I was determined to start building myself up, ready for my great escape away from hospital and back into my family and back home. Whereas we all know that's where we really, truly start to heal. My morphine-fueled moments came to a close quite literally when the boys, Gary and Dave, soon to become the bearded tits, arrived in my room. Now, by chance, I don't know, a series of chances, literally days before my accident, the boys had been out and they'd helped me, brought their cameras along to do a dragonfly survey on Peppenford, on where I worked. We had a great day. Travelling ponds rarely ever seen by any members of the general public. A chance to do an in-depth survey and get some pretty cool pictures of dragonflies at the same time. On the day of the accident, strangely, the boys were going out. One of them watched my bike. Gary watched my bike going past. So he was very aware of the accident throughout. As soon as I got a phone, and it's his fault, I was encouraged to join Facebook. And as I said previously, the birth of the crash test dummy appeared. They were intense days, as I said, but having decided with one too many 3 o'clock in the morning interruptions, the boys came in, having worked out that there was no more ops to be had. It was probably time that I calmed down on my morphine, and it was definitely about time for everybody's sake. You know that you've got a problem when one of the male nurses brings a gobstopper in and tells you that you're being gobby, and that you're giving your missus a hard time, and your family a hard time, and you're being very demanding. Part of the process is not normally me. Okay, I'm a little bit of a princess, but I'm not that demanding. What more can you do with mates like that? Great mates, they basically sat there, and every time I started to decide I probably could do with a bit more morphine, they fed me full of sugary sweets and carried on talking or listening. And for that, brothers, you have my thanks. The boys are very much a part of the therapy, the bearded tits and wildlife therapy in the future. Definitely a chapter for future, once I have their permission to release a few of those tales. I had lots of other visitors coming in, family, helping me to sort through. I had visits from military users on the range who came in, strangely conversations drifting about morphine, the effect of morphine and its use on the battlefield, and how it was affecting squaddies that are really dealing with similar injuries, different circumstance. Mine was traumatic, but certainly nothing like battlefield trauma. But these were the group of people that I worked with. In fact, one of them, who will remain nameless, was rather upset that I wasn't in a metal frame reconstructing my leg. And strangely enough, he may have had a premonition, which will be one for a future tale in my recovery. Well, anyway, I've waxed long enough and lyrical enough on that little recovery. With the boys in tow, or certainly on standby, things started to calm down, and I made a real effort. I came off my morphine. I ended up with another quite heated discussion with the pain control nurse, pretty much lecturing her indignantly as to how she had allowed my body to beg morphine. I was that disassociated in my own mind. Part of me had been floating around doing the high-level healing, and then all of a sudden, as the morphine came off, all of me started to get back into the room, and I was ready to get home. As I said, I'd done some miles on crutches, so those days, or the next few days, were spent up and down corridors. And I will cover that in the start of my journey home, my escape from hospital, in our next little video. Thank you as always for listening to the wanderings and mutterings of a wise and ancient wizard. As I've mentioned before, it certainly helps me put my life in context. And this has been a wonderful process for a full moon. It's helping me to find some completion. Take care, go well, and blessed be.